Hello my friend, today we are going to talk about the arrow function. Arrow function is a function that uses arrow syntax. It means that it's gonna change a function that looks like this into something very small, like this. So we type the arrow and on the left side we type the parameters of the function. We do not type a name of function, we do not type a function. And afterwards we type what is the body of the function, and we've just created the same function here using the arrow function syntax, okay? And you might be wondering, why should we do such things? Well, you can use it for example, mapping or filtering items from the arrays. But before we go into this, let's try to explore the arrow function syntax a bit more. Notice that right now we have got something that doesn't look still too good, right? Arrow function can be even much shorter. We do not need to use the curly brackets. We can just remove them. And this thing is really this thing. Yes, if you have a single line in a body of function and it just returns something, you do not need to use curly brackets in the arrow function syntax, okay? And what's more, you do not need to use parentheses. So, wow, this is a pretty short version of this thing above here, right? And the cool thing is that because this is a function, we can invoke it, right? So imagine that this is what? This is like a name of function, right? And now we want to invoke it. So how do we invoke a function? We type the value that we want to send to the function in the rounded parentheses, right? So for example, like this. So we send here 4 and here we send, for example, 5. And we want to see the result of both of it. So let's use the alert function to show it like this. So 4 multiplied by 2 is what? It's 8, and 5 multiplied by 2, it's 10. So 8 and 10 has been shown. So yes, that's true. We've just shortened this thing here to something like this, right? But what was the original reason we created functions? We wanted to save the functionality of something and be able to repeat it many times in our code, right? So if we wanted to use it a few times, like this, and then maybe again, then we create a function, right? So why bother doing something like this, right? Because, well, now if we want to multiply by, for example, 3, we just change it in one place, right? And now we have got here 3, but if we did it like this, we would need to change what? In every occurrence to 3. Yes, that's true. You normally create a function in cases like this, when you want to repeat the code many times, when there might be a change later, then you can just change it from one single place. However, there is a reason we create arrow functions. Look, let's create a list, an array, and let's assign to it a few numbers, right? And let's, for example, I want to create a new array that will have now numbers that will be equal to something like 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, right? This is the thing that I want to have now, right? So I want to change this into this. I want to transform one array into another. So normally you would probably do something like that. You would create an array that would go through every element, right? So let there be an I variable that is equal to I, and if I is lower than number length, right? So we're gonna go through every element, and now we're gonna assign to each of that element, right? Numbers. To each of that element, what? Well, we need to multiply the value by 2. So, well, we could do something like numbers multiplied by 2, or we could use our function, right? So we can do numbers of I, and to be honest, we solved the problem. So let's show the numbers and let's fix the error here. And as you can see, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and everything works fine. But we had to write pretty lots of code to do such simple thing. And now imagine that we want to filter. So we want to, only select the values that are bigger than 5. So 6, 8, and 10. That would be harder, right? Because we will need to make a condition and only save the ones that we are looking for. And our code would get even bigger. For situations like this, when you want to, change something in an array, and then, for example, filter, we can use a map and filter function. How do they work? Look, we can do something like that. Numbers, and then we can use the map function, and we can send here a function that is gonna be executed on every number that we have in an array, right? So in case of numbers, we're gonna execute it on 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we can just send here a multiply by, right? Let's take this under the command, and let's see what will be the result. So as you can see, we have got the same result, right? So I think this is pretty faster, right? So we use this function here, we send it here, and the map function assigns a new value to each element of an array, right? And it does it this way that you have got here in the return statement, and it returns it, right? So we just printed it. And that's the result. But there is a problem here. Well, what if I wanted to change it to, multiply it differently? So by different number, right? Well, we can, do something like this, because it's gonna what? It's gonna invoke a function here, right? And to be honest, this function is gonna just what? Return 4 multiplied by 2. So it's gonna be like this, right? So it would be better to use anonymous function or an arrow function. We've talked about anonymous functions, right? So we need to create a function, then you don't type the name of the function, but you do something like that, return, and then you say so x, and then you say what you do with the x, so x multiplied by 2, for example. And as you can see, it works fine. But this syntax, compare it to this one, right? We can fix it, this entire code, by removing the function, right? Removing the curly brackets and return. And here is the parentheses, and we need to use the arrow. We don't need this parentheses. Much simpler, right? And as you can see, the result is the same, and we can easily see what happens here, right? We want to map, so we want to assign to each value from the numbers what the element of each array value multiplied by 2. And that's all. We've just mapped, so we assigned new values following this rule. That's cool, right? This is pretty fast and easy to read, comparing to this or to comparing to anonymous functions. And what's more, we can instantly filter our result. So, for example, let's make it like this. New numbers, right? And let's say that we want to now do something on our new numbers. So we want to filter them, and we want to filter them using the rule that we gonna put here. So follow the rule that x must be bigger than 5. That's how the filter function works, okay? And we can assign it to filtered numbers, okay? And now, as you can see, we have got now only 6, 8, 10 because we have filtered numbers. And what is even better, we can do it faster. Look. Filter number, filter, and then we're gonna use the x arrow function, and x must be bigger than 5. And that's fast, right? We have got 6, 8, 10. In one line, we transformed the array, and then we filtered it using this rule. We didn't need to, create entire function and think how to solve this problem. We just, type the .map.filter. Everything is done. This is pretty powerful, right? And it's easy to read if you understand the syntax, right? So the syntax is like this. Here it's what's gonna happen, right? Here we have got the parameters that we are working on, and we've just shortened this entire function into this, right? And we can use it now differently. Like, okay, now I want to multiply it by 5, and I want to only numbers that are greater than 10, right? On numbers too, right? Because we need different, something like that. Bam, solved. And it's easy to read, right? Pretty awesome.